had the greatest job in the world, and that's working with dogs.
Best in Show winner is the French Bulldog.
Winston won the National Dog Show. It was amazing. It was exciting. And to have a dog to be #1 dog in this country, you have to have great nutrition. And I always fed Pro Plan. Just like us, when we eat well, we feel good. And I just love that food and what it's done all these years to all the dogs I've bred and all the dogs I've shown.
Welcome to Pure Dog Talk. I am your host, Laura Reeves, and I tell you what, guys, I love our Love the Breeds interviews. They are fun for me. They are fun for everybody else. And this is another near and dear to my heart breed. And I'm being joined by Colleen Sullivan from Sunday Soul
Hi.
Akitas. How are you doing, Colleen?
I'm good. Thank you, Laura.
Excellent. Colleen and I, like Jamie from the Wolfhounds, we go way back. And,
Yeah.
way back. And I just thought, of all the people I could talk to about Akitas, I thought Colleen would be a great place to start. So welcome, dear. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
Excellent. So give us a just brief little 411, your involvement in the breed. You've been at it for a minute. So tell us about it.
Yeah, just a couple. So, yeah, I got my first Akita as a pet in 1986.
Mm.
So, and then bred my first litter after getting a show dog and finishing that dog about 4 years later.
Mm-hmm.
So I bred well over 100 Akita champions, as well as doing a lot of double titles on both ends with my intact Akitas, which I'm always very proud of that fact.
I think it's actually one of the coolest parts because Akitas and obedience aren't really like, synonymous.
Right. I remember when I bought a dumbbell at 3C's and and they looked at me and they're like, Akitas don't do obedience. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. But they've come a long way. And I really enjoy doing the performance events with the dogs. I actually like more seeing the expression on other exhibitors' faces when I walk up with an intact male Akita at the obedience ring. Uh, but yeah, they are really a versatile breed. And I think more and more people are seeing that, and more and more exhibitors are getting out there, both, people that own companions as well as people that are competing in conformation.
Right. Excellent. So let's start with just a little, what to me, just sort of the history and the magic of the Akita is sort of its history. So if you want to take us through that, this is a long time, really beautifully revered breed in Japan. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So the Akita is like, like started like in the Stone Age, in Japan. So I think the three important events that had really occurred is obviously the story of Hachiko and his loyalty to his owner. The fact that the Akita is one of 6 natural monuments in Japan. That Hellen Keller is credited, for the first Akita, and I think that was 1931,
30s, mid to late
37,
30s.
37.
Okay, yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
1937.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that, during the World War II, the Akita almost became extinct because it was basically illegal to own any dog because they were used for food, and the Akita Specialty's coat was used to line the servicemen's coats and jackets and that sort of thing. So but the breed itself, you know th- I think when they first came well, I know for sure they were accepted into the working group on April 4th of 1973. And I remember that because that's my birthday. so,
There you go.
so it
There
was
you go.
destined.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it was
You just were
destined.
born that year, right? Let's just run.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shh, shh.
Shh,
Um,
secret.
yeah, but but anyway, um, so I think that they do have a broad history. They've come a long way, obviously, from
Mhm.
the dogs that we got originally, because they were crossbreeding them initially for dog fighting. It
Right.
became very prominent in Japan. And I think that was also in the 30s. What was it? Look
The
at my
Tosa
note.
crosses, weren't they more like the 40s and 50s?
Um,
I don't remember exactly.
yeah, I think it was see World War II, and then the dog fighting. I thought it was like the 30s, but I
Maybe.
could be wrong. But anyway,
Anyway, I know
so yeah,
initially they were like hunting dogs and guarded the Shinto shrines and those sorts of things.
yeah, they were companions for the samurai.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then they also were used briefly for hunting bear and boar, but
Hmm.
mostly they were guard dogs,
Hmm.
and then of course the dog fighting. But um yeah, I think when we were talking about the dog fighting, yeah, it was I still can't remember. This is driving me crazy. But anyway,
This is what happens, old age is a thing, girl.
I know. But yeah. Yeah, but they, when we got them here, obviously they were also our serviceman took a liking to them,
Hmm.
and they were crossbred with a German Shepherd because those were the only dogs that, weren't killed.
Yeah.
Um so, you can kind of sometimes see that look a little bit, in some
Mhm.
of the dogs, but
100%.
yeah, yeah. But we've really come far in the breed, not just in looks, but definitely in
Yeah.
temperament. And that kind of goes back to that whole thing of performance dogs and being versatile.
Mhm.
Um, my dogs have done anywhere from obedience to rally to scent work to
Right.
therapy work.
Right.
And a lot of people are doing that, I
Mhm.
think the breed is just a wonderful breed. Obviously, I'm passionate about them.
Right.
They're easy to live with, in my opinion, unless, of course, you have a lot of people coming over that have so-called friendly dogs that what they want to throw in with your Akita.
Such another good.
That's
So let's start with that. So let's start with the whole,
okay.
who makes a really great Akita owner, right? Like who do you love to sell your dogs to? Who's your best kind of puppy home?
Um, I think someone that doesn't expect them to be something they're not,
Yeah.
first and foremost, and someone um, that will be a pack leader. And sometimes that has to be explained a little bit.
Hmm.
But if you're not, they will be.
Oh yeah.
So in charge. Um, Someone that will attend some obedience classes, and not that I feel obedience is imperative. Um, I think more learning about dog behavior and dog body language is more important with the Akita.
Yeah.
Um, so um, I would say, someone that studies the breed, that really is the type of person that understands them, for the
Right.
most part, fully. They are what they are. They're not a golden retriever,
Right. They're not a golden retriever. And I think that same sex aggression is described in the standard, right? Like this is a thing.
Yes.
And I think it just
Yes.
needs to be really specific to people. Like, no, you're not going to run a pack of Akitas. This isn't a thing.
Right. No, you can't do that. I mean, that's probably the hardest thing about living with them, honestly,
Mhm.
because they're a quiet breed. They're clean.
Yes.
They're easily potty trained.
Yep.
Um, they don't bark unless there's really a reason.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it takes more time if you have multiple Akitas to exercise them.
Well, I
Um,
still have a rule, Colleen, and this is 30 plus years in. No testicles go together at my house. I still don't. It's just a thing that, started during the time that I had a lot of Akitas. We just
yeah.
don't do same sex runouts. We just don't.
It's not worth it,
No.
and I think with me, the older I get, the more I don't take any chances. Currently I have a 3-year-old male and a 10-month-old male that are inseparable, but I'm not naive enough to believe it's always going to be that way. They play together, they're really good together. I consider myself very educated on dog behavior and my Akitas. So um, I also don't have any intact bitches,
Yeah.
and that's very helpful.
Makes a difference. It does.
It makes difference. So, my dogs, I do have an acre here in Arizona. They do get to run, weather permitting. But I also hand walk them. So, they do get walked. Each dog probably twice a week, 2 miles. And I wish
Mm.
I could do more, but because you can't walk two together,
No,
I don't
you
walk
can't.
two together.
You can't.
Um,
That's not a thing.
it just takes longer.
Right. So I think,
Yeah.
for me, when I talk to people about Akitas or when I recommend, who they should talk to for a breeder, like you just need to be, this is fact. They are not necessarily going to buddy up to everybody that walks in the door, and they're not necessarily going to get along with other dogs. It's just a thing.
Right. Right. Exactly. And again, it goes back to what you were asking me about, the perfect owner.
Right.
That's just the information that they need to know,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
accept.
Yep.
So yeah, they're not, you know, I have had some, as you are aware, that
Hmm.
loved everybody.
Yes.
Um,
A
but
couple,
I also,
actually.
yeah,
I
but
showed
I've
them.
also had, ones that are particular
Hmm.
about who they buddy up to,
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I have a male right now. He's pretty much true Akita. He
Yep.
loves his people,
Right.
but
That
otherwise,
that's
not
about it.
everybody.
Yep.
Yep, that's
And
that's about it.
I think that that's just the thing. I just want to put that into the conversation and just go forward with that as a known. If you're good with, either crate and rotate or separation or however, this is
Yeah.
an amazing breed. I love them. They're like people in fur to me. And I think that
Yeah.
I've always thought that, and I've always described them that way. And I think that's one of the things I wanted you to touch on is just the way their minds work, right? Like an Akita figures if you're afraid, you're a bad guy. Like they just think
Yep.
about things differently.
Yeah, I think they think too much
Yes,
sometimes. Um,
100%.
so yeah, absolutely. If you hesitate,
Hmm.
if you're not a calm, confident person, yeah, you're suspicious,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
um, for sure.
That's just how their little
But
brains work.
yeah. And don't go, oh, come here. You're all after them. They're like, I don't think so. you
Well,
know,
and I think of it this way, and you and I have talked about this before. You don't come up to some random stranger on the street and hug them around the neck and baby talk them. You would have
exactly.
the same reaction that an Akita would have. Whoa, get off me and I might bite you. Like, I mean, they really are people with fur. in the way I think
That's a
about them.
That is a great point. I mean, it's just giving that analogy of, you're not going to walk up to some stranger or allow some stranger to give you a hug and a kiss.
Right.
You're just not. And not all people are extroverts, they're
Right.
introverts, just like dogs.
Hmm.
There's golden retrievers, the extrovert, and then there's the Akita, the introvert,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think those things, when you understand those things, I think it helps you get to where the breed is. Talk to us about, you were talking about exercise. I think that's a really great like next conversation point. This isn't a breed that needs to, like have constant exercise. Like you think some of your sporting dogs and some of these dogs, they're much quieter, I think, don't you?
correct. Oh, totally. I mean, I train dogs as well, and I
Mhm.
love training those hyperactive dogs, but I don't want to live with them. The Akita is doesn't demand a lot of exercise, and to me, it more mental stimulation, like asking them to do something or whatever, that's more important
Mhm.
than the physical exercise. I mean, they enjoy going for a walk. It's a bonding thing, Again, your dog has to be under control because a lot of times in neighborhood walks, you're going to run into other dogs.
Mhm.
So, but they do enjoy that, but they really do enjoy doing things, teaching them simple things like place, or go in your crate, or spin, or give me your paw, something like that, and then they're kind of done,
Yeah.
you know.
That was plenty. And there's no, I
Yeah.
mean, I just always laughed at you when you're sort of, you were talking about the dumbbell and the advanced obedience. I, of course, have sporting dogs and always have had an Akita for years and years and years. And I would try and try and try and teach the Akita to retrieve. And they would just look at me like, are you nuts? Like, if you want it so bad, you go get it.
Yeah, yeah, that's you know, I do have one Akita that excelled in obedience and got to a CDX.
Hmm.
That was Bellamy,
Hmm.
but it took me a year to get her to take
Yeah.
the dumbbell. I mean, just a year on getting the dumbbell.
Yeah.
Now the dog I'm working on now, he loves the dumbbell.
Mm.
Now it's like teaching him to hold it when I tell him to
Right.
hold it,
Right.
but he'll retrieve it. He'll go over the jump, retrieve it, bring it back, and then he just spits it at me. So
That sounds about right.
yeah, but we're working on it.
It's
So yeah, for sure, you have to convince them that this is something they love,
mhm.
um, because they don't come naturally, typically
Yeah.
loving that.
No. I do think that that is a thing. The other one I think about is grooming, because one of the things that I love about Akitas is that, most of the time they are very easy wash and wear dogs. And then comes spring.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, so I love when people ask, because you show up with this beautiful dog
Right.
that's all groomed and doesn't have a hair out of place, and oh, do they shed? And then yes. But you have to kind of explain to them that it's
Right.
not like a lab or
Right.
a Roddy or something
Right.
that does shed continually for the most part. Um, that they blow their coat. So you have to explain that
Right.
all this undercoat comes out. And the faster you get that out,
Mhm.
the less hair you're going to have in your house and on your clothes and in your
Yes.
food and, everywhere.
In your
So,
eyelashes, and yeah.
yeah.
Definitely do not wear mascara while blow drying with a force dryer and a
Yeah,
Kita that's blowing coat. Let me just tell you this. No.
truth, truth. So, but yeah, they are. I mean, when they're not, as when they're not blowing coat, they are pretty
Yeah.
easily wash and wear. There's not really any,
Mhm.
trimming you have to do for the most part. You basically just, a good shampoo and a good
Right.
powerful dryer, you
Mhm.
know, a rake and a pin brush,
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
most part. They're, like you said, then there's that time of year whenever they decide that is,
Right.
because it can be in the middle of a cold front, they
Well,
decide to
and
lose.
I found, and I had more males than females, but do your females tend to drop coat with their seasons, right? When they go in season?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
what I
You-
experienced. So,
Yeah. And they're going to lose more. They're going to drop more hair than the males for sure.
hmm and I think it's important to warn people the first time they see their Akita blow coat, and when it's done, it looks like, I don't know, a coyote. It comes
Yeah,
back.
pretty much.
It's okay. It comes.
Yeah. All of a sudden, this big, fluffy, big bone dog looks like
Yeah.
a victim from some kind of
Yes.
apocalypse somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Straight up. The moth-eaten buffalo robe look, and they just start.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah, for sure.
it's amazing. But I mean, talk a little bit too about the coat, because I think for me, the coat, part of the breed's appeal is that coat is so easy to maintain, except, leaving out the rest of the time. You don't have to brush it 3 times a week. You don't, like,
No.
as your average owner, it's very simple upkeep, except for that once or twice a year.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, if I'm not showing,
Mhm.
or they're, like you said, or not, they're not blowing coat, I really don't do anything for the
Mhm.
most part. I mean, like we've talked about earlier, they're a very clean breed,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so, and because of, if a dog has a proper coat and they have that guard hair, um on top, that does repel a lot.
Mhm,
It's going to
mhm,
repel dirt, and they can just kind of shake it off or
mhm.
whatever. So super easy, just keeping them, giving them a bath from time to time, taking a brush through them
Yeah,
if you want, if you
yeah.
need to, but not necessary.
No, I love they're always clean. I mean, that was the thing that I loved. Like, I have the Spinoni in the house now. She's not clean. She's just not. It's just a pig pen.
Oh,
I mean, she just is. And it's one of the things that I love. I still have a Shiba, right? I love the Shiba. He's so tidy. Like the Akitas, they have that just almost cat-likeness about them. I had dogs, I don't know, do you still have them that will bury their poop like a cat? Like, seriously.
yeah, yeah, they will. I mean, and that is another thing about them, the cat like they are,
Yeah.
very much so, because they always want to be clean and,
Mhm.
groomed, and, never having messes near them. And
Mm-mm.
people always talk about that their dog will not
Yeah.
go to the bathroom in their own yard. They have to walk them, out to some open lot somewhere a mile
Mhm.
away to get their dog to poop. So
Mhm.
yeah, they want their area clean for sure. And they are cat like. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
them.
it's to me a fascinating breed, because there's kind of the dichotomies, right? The big tough, you know,
Yeah.
what do they call it? Scary privilege dog that's really over here
Yeah.
covering up its poopy in the gravel.
Yeah, how disgusting.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. They're
exactly.
disgusting with that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Okay. So when you're talking about training, and I wanted to segue back to your conversation about it taking a year to teach Bellamy to pick up the dumbbell. Talk about training, because they're so smart, because they are very independent minded. What are some of your, like, 3 best tips for teaching an Akita anything that he doesn't want to
So again, kind of letting them think it's their idea.
do?
um, so I think too many of us tell our dogs when they've done something wrong. And instead, we need to spend a little bit more time telling them when they do something right. So I would say, Dogs don't understand the English language. They're not born knowing what the word sit means or down or off or whatever the case might be. However, they all know how to do that. They know how to keep 4 feet on the
Right.
floor. They
Right.
know how to sit. They know how to lay down. So just telling them initially when they've done something,
Mm-hmm.
what they've done, and rewarding it with praise and hopefully a treat.
Yeah,
So
they're
then it's
not
just
super food motivated. That was my
right.
experience.
But if you do the training during feeding time, you can just feed them their kibble
Mhm.
out of your pocket, or whatever. So that's usually what I do is from tiny babies, when they're doing something, when they come to me, they
Right.
get a treat.
Right.
So, all of those things. So, I think, also you have to be in control of your dog. And there's a difference between obviously training an 8-week-old Akita and a 2-year-old male Akita, So starting with a good foundation initially, purchasing from, a reputable preservation breeder, that has given that puppy a good start,
Yep.
right? Whether it be a pet or show dog. And then, holding their hands and giving them advice along the way, but then they can continue with that. I think, I know myself as a breeder, I'm there for questions in regards to
Right.
training because I think it's, you know, honestly, whether they're show or not, they are our pets.
Right.
They're the dog we took home, and we have to live with them. So, I think that just being a calm, assertive, routine oriented
Mm-hmm.
trainer owner
Mm-hmm.
is the most important thing. Being consistent, um, you know, you can't like let your dog jump all over you one time and
Right.
then get mad at it the next
Right.
time it's doing it.
Yes. See, firm, fair, and consistent. This is
Yeah.
my mantra. Like, and it started because of Akitas and wire hairs, because I had smart dogs. And and
Yeah.
and I think it's important that we clarify firm doesn't mean firm be mean. It means
No.
rigid um adherence to those boundaries that you've set. Like if it's a boundary, it's always a boundary.
Yeah. Mean what you said.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Okay, so health and longevity.
Yes.
Pretty
So
good. Yeah.
I think, since when you and I started
Right.
playing with the kids,
Right.
it's come a long way.
Okay.
I think
That's
we've
good.
learned, yeah, we've learned a lot about that. And Akitas, for the most part, they're all living over 12 years,
Oh wow.
unless something disastrous like cancer or something comes up.
Mhm.
But honestly, I think it's really gotten a lot better.
Do you still see the problems with bloat that we were having for a while?
I think they see a lot of it in rescue.
Mm.
I don't see it that much in my line.
Yeah,
It
your line
doesn't
was always pretty clean, but I know there were
yeah.
God knows I know there were families that it definitely ran in.
Oh, I know you. Yeah. So I don't hear about it that much. I know it still occurs.
Mhm.
But we have options now and they can
Okay,
do
but think
things.
about that national in Chicago with the flights of stairs and like 3 or 4 dogs bloated like just at the national because it was such a disaster. That's always like in the back of my mind, you know?
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, it's a scary thing, and I
Mhm.
know it's not just in our breed; it's in several
Yeah.
deep-chested breeds, and it does tend to run in lines,
Yeah.
more so than others. Um, but it can happen to any dog,
Mhm.
any line.
Mhm.
So I think just again being educated about it. I I hesitate to make this statement, but you know, one of the things that I do, because the Akita is such a primitive breed, it's one of the oldest breeds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, is I look at more the wolves and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the coyotes and how they exercise and how they eat, and all the exercise is
Mm-hmm.
done because they're chasing their prey. you
Right.
know then they're gorging themselves and they're getting
Mm-hmm.
all these bodily fluids and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
then they rest.
Mm-hmm.
So all my exercises before eating, they get lots of fluid on their food
Mm-hmm.
when they're eating, and then rest.
Yeah. Yeah. That's again, my dog feeding habits haven't changed, and I haven't had an Akita in 15 years. So it does get into your head, you systems.
Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and talk a little bit. We kind of lost track of this when we were doing the history. I do want you to cover it because the what we think of as the Akita today is there's been a split along the way, right? 2020, I think
Yes.
we just say,
Yeah,
and
it
now
was
we have
May of 2020. Yep.
the Japanese Akita coming up
Right.
through FSS and miscellaneous.
Right. January 1st of 23, the breed, the Japanese Akita Inu
Mhm.
was approved to compete in the miscellaneous class.
Right. That's what I thought. And I think it's important that we talk about these are different breeds at this point, right?
Yes, they are totally different breeds.
It's not just, I mean, they look different, like they have different head shapes and they have different body structures. How are they? I haven't spent that much time with the Japanese Akita Inis. How are they comparable or not to the what we think of as the Akita here?
So, um, the best way to describe it, and you probably did this at the time too, when we would see them from time to
Mm-hmm.
time in the ring. One looks like a fox,
Yeah,
the Japanese Akita,
right,
and the other one looks like a bear. And
right.
that's just getting down to just making it simplistic.
Yeah.
Um, so the heavy bone is in the Akita. And I think the Japanese Akitas are beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to me, they have always been a separate breed.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
in my
mm.
head and in my heart and in
Interesting.
my eyes.
Interesting.
They've
Okay.
always been a separate breed. And
Interesting.
many people felt that way. There was a lot of people fighting
Mhm.
for this
Yeah.
split
Right.
for a long time.
I mean, my first involvement with Akitas was like 93. So I mean, this is how far we go back. And I remember
Yes.
seeing some of what we used to call tweenies, right? When someone did a breeding. And I always thought those were so beautiful, right? But I also knew it
Yes.
was not necessarily a popular opinion. And so I love that the Japanese Akita is now getting its own rightful place.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know when I had traveled a couple times to the World Show before, long before
Hmm.
we had the split,
Mm,
it was wonderful to see these huge entries, with the Japanese Akita and the American Akita,
mm.
in separate rings, competing against their own breed
Right,
themselves,
right,
rather than
right.
against each other. So they, I never understood why it took us so long, but at the same time, it's happened now and it's
Yep,
wonderful.
yep. It's great. I've judged some. I love them. I think they're really beautiful. So,
Yeah.
okay. Any other final words of advice for people who might be considering adding an Akita to their lives besides it's like living with royalty? That's all.
It is. I think there's a lot of pride
Hmm.
as an owner of an Akita. I think that's the one thing that we all have in common that have
Hmm.
owned an Akita. They're such a magnificent dogs, magnificent beings. They're like artwork, they're just, but with power, you know, with
Yeah.
awe.
Yeah.
Someone, a saying we say in Judges Education is, they own the ground they stand on,
Hmm.
and I think that really depicts, you know, the breed. They just have that, you know.
The magnetism, I think, is
Yeah.
really, um, I don't know, one of my favorite
Yeah.
things. And that I used to threaten my dog that if he was bad, I was going to turn him into slippers.
Yeah. I love how they are this, just these powerful dogs
Yeah.
that just become little silly babies when they're with their owners. They just do these silly funny things that just, really make you laugh. And I think you feel privileged
Yeah.
that they let themselves trust you that
Yeah.
much, you know, to let their guard down, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think that's a lot of it. When you have a connection with an Akita, it is, and I have shown and owned and lived with and whatever a million different kinds of dogs, and I will say to this day, that relationship is different than anything else.
Yeah. I get that. It's hard to describe though, isn't it? It's hard.
Hmm.
It's different, but it's it's something that just gives you pause, you just think, how lucky am I? you know?
Well, and it's just, I don't know. I love them and I wanted to share them with everybody. So I appreciate your time, Colleen. I thank you.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Laura. It was fun.
Good to
It
see
was
you.
fun
Good to
talking.
see you. Haven't seen you
You
in
too.
ages. Take good
I know.
take good care and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thank you.